Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Kratom Guy Show. I'm your host, Mike Overstreet, the Boston Kratom Guy. Welcome back, episode number 14. We got Dr. Marc Swogger on the show today. I had so much fun talking with Dr. Swogger, and for those of you who don't know who Dr. Marc Swogger is, he is a clinical psychologist, and he's also an associate professor at the Department of Psychiatry research at the University of Rochester Medical Center. So this was a really great interview, and I know I shouldn't be shocked, but it's always so great to me to talk to so many people at such a high caliber, professional caliber, that understand the science of kratom and is willing to speak up about it. And in some instances, it could cost them a lot. It could cost them their job or their occupation because they dare to step out against the medical establishment. Got a really great interview with Dr. Swogger coming up. We get into what got him into kratom and the work that he's done, the vast amount of kratom studies there are. So if you hear anybody say there's not enough studies, there are a huge amount of studies done, and even more being done right now, currently, by NIDA through the University of Florida. He also talks about what he thinks would happen in a kratom ban, what that would look like, and also the over-interpretations and false misrepresentations of the studies that are out there. That was such a great interview. We're going to have that coming up a little bit later. So as far as the show today, we got, of course, the main interview, Dr. Marc Swogger, and I did have a lot of news stories, but we have gotten a few requests, so thank you so much, everyone who's writing in and calling, texting, hitting me up on social media to do some shorter shows. So that's what we're going to be doing today. The main focus is going to be on the Dr. Marc Swogger interview. I did have a bunch to go through with the news, but I'll get into it a little bit later with my business update, but it's just been a crazy couple weeks. So instead of the news, we're going to start to go over, I did have a great interview with Mac. He talked about the Truth in Labeling program and the Nevada Board of Pharmacy trying to ban kratom. So that whole interview is up on my YouTube. I was going to play a clip of it, but decided against it, and for the shorter show. But what I'm going to do is the preview clips for Dr. Swogger coming up soon, but another preview clip is going to be of a news agency called KELO News, KELO, KELOland.com. Seems like the main pusher of these misinformation campaign is a woman named Angela Kennecke. So they did a 6-part series. So I'm going to play a short clip of that, and then we're gonna start to talk about the information that they're putting out and the flat out lies and misinformation and omitting the truth and the way they frame stuff. So the next episode is going to be taking a deep dive into their 6-part series. So we're going to dissect it. It's probably going to be a longer show. So that's going to be episode 15. And because it's just a lot to dissect. And I did invite Angela on the show, and she said no. So I'm going to get into all that coming up later. But first, let me tell you about our sponsor, Candied Orange Flavored Kratom. We are so excited and proud to have Candied Flavored Kratom as our first sponsor. So let me tell you guys about Candied. They are revolutionizing the kratom industry, kratom extracts, with their orange flavored drink. And the reason why I say they're revolutionizing the industry is because, one, the drink just tastes great. It's orange flavored. It comes in this little pouch, super discreet, easy to use. It was a little sweet, but it's sweetened with stevia, which I like that. And I was able to judge how much I wanted. So I wanted a stronger drink, so I just used a little bit less water, put it in a water bottle, shook it up, and drank that. But I really like that if you wanted less, just use more water, and then you can sip it throughout the day. So if you guys don't see candied orange flavored kratom at your favorite retailer, make sure you tell them that you want candied flavored kratom. And one of the great things about having Candid as a sponsor is the free giveaway. So stay tuned for later on in the episode. We're going to be giving away some Candid kratom. So we will let you know what you need to do when that time comes. So stay tuned, or go searching for it in the episode somewhere. And usually it's about like a week or 2 weeks. We'll let people enter and then choose the person. Look out for that feature in the episode.
And this would be a good time for a small disclaimer that neither myself nor any of my guests are medical professionals. Nothing we say should be considered medical advice, and you should always seek the advice of a physician or medical professional before taking anything. Any copyrighted material is used under fair use for education or criticism. Enjoy the show!
So here's a preview with our main guest, Dr. Marc Swogger.
And so there's like almost, there's actually no data suggesting that kratom causes psychosis. And we know because we have reviewed the entire literature and evaluated rigor of every study that has said anything about psychosis in kratom. And we published a review of studies of kratom that looked at 13 studies that were rigorous enough to provide decent information. You know, there are limits. For example, females are completely underrepresented in a lot of these studies. We've got no randomized controlled trials among them, but there was no evidence for kratom and psychosis being even correlated in a way that makes sense, let alone kratom causing psychosis.
And for next show, we are going to be doing a special episode solely dedicated to dissecting Angela Kenneck's misinformation and downright lies perpetrated in their 6-part anti-kratom propaganda series. Here's a clip from one of those segments. Can you spot the lies, the framing of their statements, and the misinformation?
This year, according to the South Dakota Department of Health, 3 people have died from kratom. That's 2 more than last year. It's perfectly legal to buy kratom, which comes from a plant, and there's a lot of money behind the effort to keep it that way. Tonight, KELO's Angela Kennecke talks with a family grieving the loss of 27-year-old Jacob Helmbrecht, whose primary cause of death, as ruled by the Minnehaha County coroner, is kratom. But the kratom lobby claims that supplement is never the cause of death, and the coroners are getting it wrong.
So that's just a little taste. That's just the opener, and we're going to dive into that a lot deeper before the Marc Swogger interview. I'll put that between. I'm going to get into the business update next, and then after the business update, I'll talk a little bit about that more. But you can see how they frame it and how they make it sound so terrible, and there's just this lobby group with all this money behind it. Where'd the money come from? Never mentioned once that it's a consumer lobbyist group. And then they completely scapegoat to say, oh, well, somebody else said it. The coroner said it. The medical examiner said it. So we just repeat it. They're not investigative reporters. They're repeaters. So I'm going to start to get into some of those lies. But next show, we are going to be doing a deep dive into all 6 episodes. Everything they've written in text and video, we're going to go through there and knock out each one of their talking points and let you know how you can destroy these mistruths and misinformation. As always, big thank you to you, the listener, and everyone who's been purchasing kratom from Mass Herbal. Of course, people want like hundreds of thousands of plays or millions of subscribers, but I'm just happy that I'm able to do such great work and help so many people. Your messages just mean the world to me. Unfortunately, can't eat the messages and my wife will get mad. So please, if you guys like the show, a great way to support us without spending $1 is like, share, subscribe. Know that with the Kratom Guy show and having Kratom in the title, just that alone pushes me way down in the rankings, as well as getting shadow banned and our viewer counts throttled on social media. So that's another thing I wanted to ask you guys is, what's everybody's favorite alternative social media sites? Because I'm getting really tired of this. My Instagram is gone. They took my Insta.
They took our jobs!
And I got to make another one for Kratom Guy show, but I'm going to start getting on some of the more alternative ones like Library and MeWe. So if you hear this, let me know what your favorite ones are so we can connect there. Those are ways to support the show without spending a dime. But if you would like to help support us and keep the show going, you can definitely purchase a shirt or purchase some Kratom from Mass Herbal. If you get some candid Kratom, tell them I sent you. And yeah, check us out. We got the YouTube channel. I got the new Mac Hatto interview. Like I mentioned, our Instagram has been canceled. We got the Patreon, which I haven't put much up there because I haven't had much activity, and maybe if I put more up, I get more activity. But that's a great way to support us for investigative pieces. Like for this next show with analyzing and dissecting that 6-part series from KELO, is I might have to do some FOIA requests, and that's going to cost some money. Yeah, if you want to support the show, definitely hit us up on Instagram, but Mass Herbal is a great way. That is our store. I own that with my wife, and we are looking for new vendors for Mass Herbal. So if you have a product, if you're a vendor, get in touch. So this would be good to roll right into our business update, and then you get to hear my rant about the Angela Kennecke and KELO News and their bullshit. So as far as what we've got going on, the big news is Helen Overstreet, Mrs. Kratom Guy, is pregnant. We are about 20 weeks along and due in late February. Keeps getting bumped up by the weight, so we're don't know how big this kid is going to be, but it's our first. It's a boy, and as of now, due February 20th, I believe. It's gone from the 24th to the 23rd to the 20th, and I believe one of the nurses or the techs said the 17th. So right now we're thinking anywhere between the 17th and the 23rd. So really wanted to get this show out to you guys earlier, but then last week I got 2 teeth extracted. So that took a lot out of me. Just had to rest a lot. It's like every time I went to go do work, it was like, couldn't do it. So really happy to get the show out to you guys now. And we got a big sale coming up, so be on the lookout for that. Mass Herbal, we're going to do 50% off a bunch of different reds. We got some overstock and need to make room for new stock. Be on the lookout for that. 50% off select reds is going to be probably the majority of them. And really good, though. Like the red Bali is really good. Red Bali's really good for me. I gotta say, for me, you don't take Kratom. I don't recommend taking Kratom. I take it and I share my experience. This is for litigation purposes, or to not have any litigation purposes. So I can tell you that I take it. Red Bali is great for me at nighttime, and then if I really want something strong asleep, Red Thai or Red Bangda. So all of those would be on sale, 50% off. It's going to be select because I have a feeling it's going to be a pretty big sale. Going to go fast. So that will start, I believe, Monday the 12th. But just check in on the Kratom Guy Show or Mass Herbal, any of our social media, or just go directly to the website and it will be all up there. But the big news is, and COVID has really messed this all up. I've had numerous plans throughout this thing. We were going to start working with certain vendors, and then when COVID hit, they couldn't do it because they were having import issues, and then one of the vendors' co-packers were shut down. So we are looking for new vendors to work with as marketing partners. We ourselves can stop selling Kratom and importing it, and I can concentrate more on this show, getting out more information. Essentially, I want to be able to, and it's the best part of this, is being able to have this show. I never thought it would take off the way it has, but is really incredible to me. I mean, we're nearing 10,000 plays on just the podcast. Basically, I want to start breaking up these shows into smaller clips, adding videos, and I haven't been able to do it because I'm fulfilling orders and doing everything with Mass Herbal. So we'd like to work with some other small businesses that have really great products, and it seems like we're really close to making our second deal. So Magnum Opus was our first, and they got awesome extract, and the salve. Oh, the salve is so good. I put it on my neck whenever I'm hurt, and it's awesome. Heard it works good on burns too. So our next one is a U.S. grown kratom company. So we're really close to closing partnership with them. And then I'd love to get an Indonesian vendor that works with us, has essentially an American rep that make sure all their English is correct on their marketing, and they sell on our site. And we think we found a credit card processor. So I think that's going to be a big game changer. And yeah, essentially credit card processor takes a big cut. We would take a small cut and sell directly to our customers. I think it's a win-win. So along with concentrating just on the show, we are now starting our Kratom Saves Lives program. So this program is to give back, but nothing in return. The only thing I do want in return is a phone call or a check-in every day. So we're looking for people struggling, primarily struggling addicts or veterans that need some help, want to try kratom, want to get off the stuff they're on, and they don't have money to try it out. We think it's going to be really good. The feedback has been great. I got to start a spreadsheet, but there's been so many people that are like, yeah, I'd give it to that. And we've already had our first donor, and I told him to hold on to it, that he already bought half a kilo, and he's like, I'm ready to ship it. So I'm like, hold on to it. Nobody's come forward. So if you're listening to this and you're trying to get off something, give me a call. Everything is private. This isn't going to be an open group. I don't even know where it's going to live. It might be Telegram or something. But essentially, my only caveat is that you check in with me every day. It's going to be a 3-month program. You'll get a delivery each month with your amount of kratom, and just check in with me every day, and we'll do this together. And I'm also offering the donors to be able to be a part of the program and talk to the people that they donated to. I think that's going to be really big, really great community building. So I think that about does it for our updates. We're pregnant, due in February. So the first 3 months were me making my wife breakfast every day, eggs with something in them usually, or maybe not, because she got so sick. She's just starting to get better. Helen's just starting to get better from morning sickness, but it was like a straight 3 months, and then all the doctor's visits. So I'd love to be able to essentially stop packing orders, stop filling kratom bags, and be able to sell other people's products, and then we can get them on the show, and I think it's going to be really great. Now's going to be a good time to give away our candied orange flavored kratom in our contest. So for this week, let's do on our Twitter. So if you would like to be a candidate for free kratom, free orange flavored kratom from Candid, just give us a follow on Twitter, and we're going to pick one of our Twitter followers to get some free kratom. Good luck, and see you on Twitter. So next segment, we're going to be getting into breaking down that news story from KELO land, and be on the lookout for next show where we're going to take a deep dive into the full 6-part series. That was just the opening clip of one of their stories. I believe that clip was from KELO News. Family warns about kratom death or something like that, or kratom danger. But that was just the opening. And you can see just in that opening piece from that segment, it's so loaded. I was going to put more in there, but I'd just be here forever. So, we can talk about they're saying, according to the Department of Health. What that means is, just like all the other mainstream news that get it wrong with kratom, that they're able to say, somebody else said it. We didn't do any investigation. We didn't find out for ourselves. Somebody else said it, so we're reporting it as if it is true. It comes from a plant. It is a plant. This shows you've done no research at all, or the bare minimum, probably looking at other mainstream media sources. And they always talk about it as this lobby group. It's this big money lobby group, not a consumer lobby group. And the only way that consumers were able to be taken serious is to have an organized group. No, it's big money, as though it's big pharma. They say, oh, the lobbying group said they got it wrong. It's framed as if these guys, and they even say it later on after they interviewed Mac, and of course they make him look really bad, that, these aren't medical professionals. This is just some lobby group. So, I try to stay calm, but this stuff, and I figure instead of getting mad, it's really easy to get mad and upset because everyone's passionate about kratom and keeping it legal because it's literally saving lives. And that's one of the things that really made it even worse is, so, a little backstory. Angela, her daughter died of an opiate overdose. So she's a mom on a mission, which I completely understand. But they're doing pieces on opiates and how opiate deaths are on the rise this year in South Dakota, and then at the same time demonizing kratom as though it's not saving lives. And this guy, heart goes out to the family that this could happen. This coroner said that, the other drugs he was on played no part, and kratom toxicity was the main cause of death.
We asked the Minnehaha County coroner, Dr. Kenneth Snell, if anything else could have caused Jake's death, and he told us if the other drugs contributed, they would be listed as a contributory to the cause of death final statement, which they were not.
Really? What is the toxic level of kratom? Because nobody else knows it besides this coroner, so I gotta talk to him. I'm gonna do my best to get him on the show. But he was on 5 different drugs. He was an alcoholic, admitted alcoholic. By looking at the pictures, it looks like he wasn't the prime picture of health. It looks like he was heavily overweight, taking blood pressure medicine. So let's go through it. He was on venlafaxine, Effexor, which is an antidepressant, select serotonin and norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors, and SSNRI, which the list of side effects is pretty unreal. Severe nervous system reaction, very stiff, rigid muscles, sweating, confusion, seizures, easy bruising or bleeding, blurred vision. Side effects may include nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, dizziness, headache, anxiety, feeling nervous, fast heartbeats, tremors, shaking, and a whole list of other medications that you should not be taking while you're on this. So he was on that. He was on metoprolol, Lopressor is a brand name, which is a beta blocker to treat angina, which is chest pains, and hypertension, high blood pressure. So I'm assuming he had high blood pressure. You should not use this medication if you're allergic to metoprolol or other beta blockers. And he was on, and I can go through the whole list of side effects, and I'll put the links in the description. Side effects: very slow heartbeat, shortness of breath, dizziness, feeling tired, depression, confusion, memory problems, nightmares, trouble sleeping, diarrhea. Other heart or blood pressure medicines can affect it. An antidepressant, MAOI inhibitor. He was also on mitrazapine, is another antidepressant. So far, just looking at drugs.com, you're not supposed to be mixing the medications that he was on. This one, tell your doctor if you have depression or suicidal thoughts or actions, bipolar disorder, high cholesterol, heart problems, or stroke. Side effects include weight gain, increased appetite, drowsiness, dizziness. What other drugs can affect it? Let's see, antidepressants. Then the other drugs he was on was caffeine and nicotine, which, looking it up, it seems like it's a terrible idea to be mixing caffeine, nicotine. You got heart problems. And little research I've done, it completely blocks the beta blockers that he was taking. So that was 5 drugs that he was on that the coroner says plays no effect at all. So then looking it up at the medical examiner's report, it says diagnosis, which this is all in the article, mitragine toxicity. Now, I do apologize. I'm going to butcher all the medical terms and the drug names, so just bear with me. So under that was 1, mitragine toxicity, and then under that is A, aspiration pneumonia early, B, pulmonary congestion, cardiomegaly with bilateral ventricle dilation. I got to get Cammie on this show. She's a nurse, or used to be a nurse. Awesome kratom advocate. Maybe I'll talk to her during this series. The next show examining this. Looking into the aspiration pneumonia and the pulmonary congestion. What is aspiration pneumonia? Aspiration pneumonia is a lung infection that develops after you aspirate and inhale food, liquid, or vomit into your lungs. You can also aspirate food or liquid from your stomach that backs up into your esophagus. If you are not able to cough up aspirated material, bacteria can grow in your lungs and cause an infection. So to me, what this sounds like is it's not toxicity, but it looks like toss and wash gone wrong, almost like what happened to that state trooper in New York. What can increase my risk of aspiration pneumonia? Smoking cigarettes. Hello? A weakened immune system caused by diabetes, COPD, heart failure, or other health problems. So I looked it up, and this is how people have died or got seriously injured through the cinnamon challenge. WebMD, cinnamon stunt can have serious lung effects. Ground cinnamon can be inhaled into the lungs, and some kids end up in the ER with problems as serious as collapsed lung. And we got pulmonary congestion. The accumulation of abnormal amount of blood in the vascular bed of the lungs usually occurs in association with heart failure. He had a bad heart. He was taking blood pressure medication. I should say allegedly with all of this. One is I have a healthy distrust for government and mainstream media, but I don't know. I didn't examine him. I didn't look at the paperwork. I'm going to ask Angela if she will send me over all the paperwork that they got. I highly doubt it, but maybe we'll do a FOIA request. What to know about cardiomegaly is an enlarged heart. It is not a disease, but a sign of another condition. Less severe forms of cardiomegaly are referred to as mild cardiomegaly. Fast facts. People with mild cardiomegaly may not experience any symptoms. It is sometimes temporary and resolves once it goes away. The treatment depends on the underlying cause. And then an article on here from Prescription Hope, beta blockers and caffeine effects, benefits, and what's to do. Smoking and drug interactions, which it talks about the mixing with caffeine, antidepressants, other drugs. Nicotine increases blood pressure and heart rate. Hopefully I'll be able to talk to the medical examiner or the coroner. I believe they said medical examiner. Kenneth Snell. Because I would like to know what he knows. If there is a lethal dose of kratom, we gotta know. But we haven't found one yet. And I don't understand this. If his underlying health conditions, the 5 other drugs he was taking at the time, where has it been studied that these 5 drugs interacting with each other, how does that work? And these 5 drugs interacting with not only each other, but with kratom. And if the other drugs, if they didn't play a role, how is it that there is a study up, which was poorly written, by the way, which called kratom a synthetic opiate, or opioid, but the facts of the case still remain true. There was I believe it was 15-year-old girl who tried a failed suicide attempt by swallowing, I believe it was 230 grams of kratom. That's nearly a quarter kilo of kratom. What happened? She got taken to the hospital. She was very sick, got sent to the psych ward for a mental eval, and released. She was fine. She threw up and was not feeling good, I think, for a day. So how is it a little 15-year-old girl can take 230 grams, but this guy, like I said, my heart really goes out for the family, but this guy, Jake, his accidental death was caused by mitridine toxicity, and then it doesn't even list the amount that was found in his system? What bullshit. So we're going to be diving into that a lot more. That's just a little brief overview of what we're going to go into. So we are going to dissect every single article, every single video, and we are going to go step by step to show you exactly where these talking points are and how to rebut them. And if this gets you mad, I want to say that's good, but it's almost like don't get mad, get even. So what you need to do is take some of your kratom, bag it up, and go give it away. That's right. I do it all the time. Anybody who's like, I don't sleep well, or I got this pain or that pain. Hey, have you tried kratom? I'm going to bring it into you, and I'll give them some. So that's the thing. We get the good word out. So that's what I'm doing with this show, and I try to not get too mad and see that I have a platform with this show, and the word gets out. Especially, I've noticed it gets out to new kratom consumers. So again, if you're a new kratom consumer, please give me a call. give me a text, hit me up on social media, send me a message. You don't need to buy kratom from me. I just want to connect. It's one of the best parts of my job is talking to you guys. I love these stories, and it's, besides my family, it's really what I live for. Just to hear how much kratom is helping people. It literally saves people's lives. So that's going to be next show. Next up is our interview with Dr. Marc Swogger. Like I mentioned, he's a clinical psychologist. He's an associate professor at the Department of Psychiatry, research at the University of Rochester Medical Center. His research focuses on therapeutic and harmful substance use, as well as psychopathy and violence among justice-involved people. Clinically, Dr. Swogger specializes in the treatment of anxiety disorders. He studies both therapeutic and harmful substance use. Recently, his research has focused on potential individual and public health effects of kratom use. He also studies interventions for individuals whose use of more dangerous substances is causing them harm, taking into account the psychopathy and other moderators of successful treatment. Dr. Swogger's research background includes numerous studies of violence, suicidal behavior, the recidivism among justice-involved people. Since 2017, he has been doing pro bono consultation for the Drug Policy Alliance, policymakers, and the American Kratom Association as a science expert on kratom. This work includes co-writing science letters to senators, the executive branch, the DEA, the government of Indonesia. He has met with senior staff of 9 U.S. senators concerning kratom. When asked about the DEA's potential ban on kratom, he said that the war on drugs has been costly and ineffective. He classified the move as a fast track to criminalization and said that without solid data to implicate kratom as an urgent health concern, if banned, it could potentially worsen several known urgent public health crises. He also said that the ban seemed like a cruel and foolish move. He has been featured in Business Insider, Vice, Washington Post, New York Times, New Science, Live Science, How Stuff Works, Healthline, Wired, and more. Dr. Swogger, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much for joining us. I know we've been trying to talk for a while and getting our schedules to line up. It's great to have you. And if you wouldn't mind just giving like a quick brief background or the work you're doing in kratom.
Oh, sure. I'm an associate professor at the University of Rochester Medical Center, and I do harm reduction and substance use research. And so I sort of ran across kratom in 2015, right before the DEA came out with their intent to schedule it as a Schedule I substance. Mm-hmm. And so, we had done some research, and we're sort of in the right place at the right time to be able to talk about it in a scientific way. Ever since, I've been interested in the plant because of its possibilities for pain relief and harm reduction for people with opioid use and other problems. But I've also been interested in the politics of it, which have shown me a lot about how the government works and how people can fight back when their civil rights are being taken away.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I've heard you, and I've done it myself, compare this to the cannabis prohibition. And then when we are now in the day and age that we are, with all the social media and how easy it is to pass on information and get solid information, so the propaganda can't spread as fast. This is it's pretty incredible times, the pushback from the public and the progress that we've been able to make as far as keeping kratom legal.
Oh, it's super interesting because the pushback from the public and the scientific community and anybody who cares about it and knows anything about the plant has actually resulted in unprecedented moves by the DEA. I mean, pulling back from that intent to schedule, who came out and said, "Hey, this is helping me, and you don't have a right to take it away." So it's kind of exciting.
Yeah, it really is. You said you and a couple of colleagues, now you were studying kratom before the DEA tried to ban it. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it was actually probably 2014 that I ran across it on the Arrowwood site. I think it's arrowwood.org. And Earth and Fire Arrowwood were willing to give me their data. So people would send in experience reports after using kratom and would detail what happened. And those reports are usually pretty interesting because, people are just shooting from the hip and they have just taken a plant or another drug, or sometimes harmful drugs, and will write about their experience. So I wanted to capture that data and take a look at it in a systematic way so that we could see what some of the themes were with regard to kratom, because it hadn't been studied particularly carefully, at least in the West. And Earth and Fire Arrowwood were willing to do that. And so we published a paper in 2015 that detailed the themes that came out of those experiences with kratom.
Gotcha. That kind of answers a little bit of my next question, but normally one of my first questions is what got you into kratom? But I did have a question off of Twitter. It was from Erica. She said, how or why did Dr. Swogger become interested in covering the issues surrounding kratom? So kind of goes into that same kind of gist. So what got you even into even searching for kratom?
I can't remember where I heard about it, but once I saw the experience reports, it was pretty clear that this was an interesting compound because it was something that provided people with pain relief, or at least they were reporting that. And it was also something that was useful to people who were trying to get off of other things that they didn't want to be taking, but felt that they were having trouble getting off of. So I'm not just talking about opioids, I'm talking about antidepressants, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, anything that people were trying to get off of for mood or because they had a harmful dependence on it. Kratom was useful, or at least that's what the reports were. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh, well, we should do a study on this. And then we did that study, and then having found out some things about it, about its potential for pain relief, about its potential side effects or withdrawal effects. When the DEA decided they were going to make it a Schedule I substance, I was in a pretty good place to talk about it with the media and with the public. And that was really rewarding. As a researcher, you don't always get a chance to make a difference outside of medical journals or psychological journals. And this was that chance, and it was really nice.
So it seems like there's a few papers that have your name on them. You started studying it, you put out the papers, and then you just had, as soon as the DEA started to try to ban it, you just had a bunch of different news agencies or publications just contact you because you had done this study? Or how does that work to get to be on so many different publications?
Yeah, it was well, that was an interesting thing too, because I didn't at that time consider myself somebody who was going to take my career in this direction, but because of the public interest in it and the media contact, I was able to, I just sort of developed a big interest in it because I was in a place to make a difference. And I can't say that we've done a lot of rigorous research on it. People like Christopher McCurdy and Oliver Grundman and, other people are doing perhaps more clinically oriented studies. But we did have a lot of information that people wanted. And so that gave me a chance to dive into it a little more and get to know some people in the East, like Darshan Singh, who's publishing papers out of Southeastern Asia and has, he's got a whole different history, kratom, and his participants in his studies have a whole different history. And yet the research, whether it's in the West or the East, shows pretty much the same stuff.
Right.
That people are using it for mood elevation, but more often pain reduction, and then, depending on the circumstances, harm reduction for opioid use disorders. And so seeing the same withdrawal symptoms in the East and the West, seeing the same benefits in the East and the West really gave us a confidence in the observational research that we're doing. And so that when people say we have no research on this, they're full of shit. There's a lot of it, and we appreciate the clinical research that's being done to give people a better idea. Randomized controlled trials are going to happen, and people are going to know what the risks and benefits of kratom are. But in the meantime, it's not a reasonable policy to take kratom away from people when we have a lot of good information that it's doing more good than harm.
Yeah, it seems like Seems like those people that say, "Oh, we don't have enough research," or there's no research on it, is that they are looking for those double-blind studies, or the studies that you just mentioned that a drug company would have to go through.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I understand why. Like in the United States, we do research a particular way, and we have the FDA is a really good institution that ensures that we've looked very closely in rigorously scientific ways at the drugs that are coming out. The problem is when we don't have that information about a plant that people are already using, some people will come out and say, we know nothing because there are not those studies. When in fact we have a great deal of evidence across cultures with a number of observational studies that kratom is not the menace that it's being talked about as, and that it helps a lot of people, and that taking it away would do more harm than good.
Yeah, I've heard you say that a few times, that you, and I believe it too, that you're a firm believer that if kratom was taken away, it would be on multiple levels more harm than good. Now, I know there would be the people that would risk of people going back to their drug of choice, but what do you think that would look like if it was just banned?
Oh yeah, that's what we try to. So there are people. The American Kratom Association is doing a really good job of making this case to people in government, and people like Jack Henningfield who know the science are also making this case that when you have however many million people we have using kratom in the United States, and there are only estimates, but it's a lot. If you take that away, and a lot of them are people who've had opioid problems, they will relapse to opioids, and some number of them will die of overdose. And we know that kratom doesn't have those risks. It undoubtedly has some risks that we don't know about, but there is not the overdose risk in the same way. It doesn't cause respiratory suppression. And unfortunately, there are still many, many influential people coming out and saying that it does, when all of the science, basic science and observational science, shows that kratom does not cause significant respiratory depression. And so because that's the main mechanism by which opioids cause death in people with harmful opioid use, kratom is a harm reduction tool. And if they take it away, many people will go back to opioids, and some of them will die of overdose, and that matters.
Yeah, and I think it's also the other side of it too, that it's all of a sudden a ban, but on the other side of that is put it in Schedule 1. That's up there with heroin. I think meth is Schedule 2 or 3, and it really could all depend on how much law enforcement, either local or federal, want to take up against it. I mean, a whole ban could turn out into a whole new drug war.
Oh, that's a super good point. Yeah, I'm really concerned about that. We incarcerate way too many people. People on Republicans and Democrats and people all over the place politically are acknowledging that we in the United States incarcerate too many people, and that it has basically wiped out a generation of people in certain situations, and it's got to be undone, and then we have to make it better. And so by scheduling kratom, by saying we're going to incarcerate people who use this plant to try and make their lives better, it's just a ramping up of the drug war. It's the same stuff, and it's really frightening that it's all these years later. I mean, this war was started for racial and political reasons to begin with. It had nothing to do with public health, and however many years later, here we are, and there's still a group of people trying to schedule kratom. Shame on them, basically.
It's really unreal, and it's great that we have this pushback, but it's still today, like we see all the success that states are having with medical marijuana and how they've reduced opioid prescription rates and opioid overdoses, and places like Uruguay and Portugal that have decriminalized all drugs. A lot. They've seen a decrease in drug use and overdoses. That we're still locking people up and using violence against peaceful people that want to use certain substances that really needs to be addressed as a medical health issue, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, Thanks, Mike. That's a super good summary of it. I mean, we've seen that. Let's not let them use public health as a reason to ban things anymore, because we've seen the evidence is pretty clear that making drugs illegal has not worked, that it is not in the public health interest. And kratom is just another example of that.
So I do have, there was a tweet you put out not too long ago that says, that says, we have published 3 peer-reviewed studies addressing kratom and psychosis. One being a review of 13 other peer-reviewed studies. This is as yet no credible evidence for kratom psychosis. The 1975 data suggesting otherwise has been misinterpreted. So I think that was in response to somebody saying that kratom causes psychosis. Can we jump into like that tweet and that data you're referring to and the studies that you guys have done?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I think that the idea that kratom causes hallucinations and delusions, psychosis, is one that is used at the legislative level to win people over to the side of banning kratom. And because there is some confusion about that, I felt that it was a good idea to weigh in. I'm a psychologist and I know a fair amount about psychosis, and there's nothing in the literature to indicate that kratom causes psychosis. What happened was a study was done in Southeastern Asia in 1975, where they looked at a number of people who were using kratom and also saw that they had like in that sample, there were high levels of psychosis. That is a correlation, and what we know is that correlation never implies causation. You have to do other types of science to establish causation. So what they had done was go to a lot of people who were psychotic and found out that they were using kratom. And one of the things that might have been going on is that they were using kratom to alleviate their symptoms of psychosis. But what has happened as a result is that that study has been cited over and over and over again to make the case that kratom causes psychosis. And unfortunately, what happens in the literature is that if a study is cited, then other people will cite the study that cited it. And so there's like there's actually no data suggesting that kratom causes psychosis. And we know because we have reviewed the entire literature and evaluated rigor of every study that has said anything about psychosis in kratom. And we published a review of studies of kratom that looked at 13 studies that were rigorous enough to provide decent information. There are limits. For example, females are completely underrepresented in a lot of these studies. We've got no randomized controlled trials among them, but there was no evidence for kratom and psychosis being even correlated in a way that makes sense, let alone kratom causing psychosis. So I think it's important for people to know that while we don't have the studies to rule it out, there's just no evidence for it. So there's sort of an amplification of poorly done studies.
It makes me think of a couple others that are kind of along these same lines. There is the claim recently on the news, I think it was Minnesota, there was a doctor that said they referred to kratom as an opiate.
If this is the Mayo Clinic video that's pretty widely circulated, I think that they'll figure out the science, and it's unfortunate that there's been poor interpretation of the science in that way, but I think they're going to get on the right track.
I hope so. So yeah, there's referred to it as an opiate. There's also the claim that it's 13 times more powerful than morphine. There's the Poison Control Center calls, and then there's also the liver damage. And they all seem to be on the general gist of this kratom causes psychosis, that the 13 times more powerful than morphine. I believe, I don't know the study exactly, but that's a reference to its pain-killing abilities, not the psychotropic quality to it.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, we use compounds in certain doses based on their potency in certain ways. So, people are doing fine not overdosing with kratom. In most cases, it's something you don't want to do. And some of the kratom preparations are questionable, but if you stick to plant, it's reasonable to think that you can dose that in a helpful way. The other things you're talking about, though, are interesting. So if you take those poison control center call studies and you look at them closely, you realize that the data are particularly bad. People are calling in as they realize that they've taken something and they don't feel like they want to, or people get concerned about other people, and that's good. But then that data is taken and turned into something that it's not. Those poison control studies are a very low level of evidence and should not be taken to mean that kratom causes psychosis or some of these other negative outcomes. Now, the liver toxicity case studies sort of, they make me wonder. You can't tell that much from a case study. So if a few case studies of liver complications after taking kratom come out, it's very difficult to interpret that, and it's been overinterpreted. Most people who take kratom and then you study them in group design studies do not report that sort of thing. But there've been enough, and they're for case studies, they're reasonably well done, that I would think that people who have any liver problem should use caution, and it should just remind us that we're taking something that we don't know quite how it's going to affect us. So it's reasonable to use caution.
Yeah, I would think so. But the that liver damage, I mean, I don't have the study right in front of me, but it was males. I think it was somewhere from like 30 to 70 years old with the median age of 41, I believe, and no mention as to diet, stress levels, other medications they were on, if they're taking Tylenol, if they're drinking alcohol, how much sugar they're intake. And I mean,
maybe I haven't seen that one, but those are good points. I mean, you need that information because it's already been used in coroners' reports. The kratom has caused liver damage, and then you find out that somebody has been drinking for 40 years at excessive levels. So that all of that is very important information. I have seen a few case studies that have done a nice job of reporting that information, and it looked like, as far as they could determine, kratom was the only thing going on. I haven't seen any more rigorous group design studies that have reported all of the information that you need to have in order to evaluate them.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree that, it is still, as much as we do know, it's still wise to proceed with caution. And who knows, maybe it does damage the liver, but from what I've seen, I haven't seen solid proof. Like, I don't even know how you would go, like, you'd have to have a control group, right? Like, you'd have to have everyone completely healthy checking in before they started their kratom use, and then during and after. Or I don't even know how you would get solid data on that.
No, that's exactly right. You've got it. You'd have to randomize them to, people who get kratom, people who don't, and then look at all of these important factors and take them into account when you do the analysis. And that's what randomized controlled trials are all about. And that's sort of, it comes back around to, that's what doctors are talking about when they say we don't have randomized controlled trials. We don't have this data that would give us more nuanced understanding of the risks and benefits. It's just that in the meantime, they need to zoom out and think about public health and realize that there is a whole literature of decent scientific data that says that this is not a big public health concern, and that until they get more evidence for harm or whatever they're looking for, we don't know what we're doing if we ban it. Like you said, we are incarcerating more people. We are taking it away from people who are using it to their benefit, and we're basically taking away a civil right. Other than that, we don't know what we're doing if we ban it.
Yeah, other than that.
Other than those small things.
Yeah, it's something that everyone glosses over really easily, that the whole thing of the, many different rights, but the Fourth Amendment being secure in your person's papers and effects, and that is completely like thrown out if somebody has a certain substance on them or in their property.
Oh yeah, we were kind of. I feel like people were brainwashed a while back, and it's like you were referring to with cannabis and the psychedelics. I mean, these are plants that have certain risks associated, but could do a lot of good for people, and people know that, and they want to use them, and so they're going to use them, and so we shouldn't be incarcerating them for it and creating a bunch of violence around it. It's just wrong.
I definitely agree. And I do want to kind of back up a little bit and talk about, because it's been mentioned a couple of times, and I did see in some of your work that you're doing something with ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, just the whole concept of harm reduction and the work you've done behind that, because I believe you've been involved in some studies of psychedelics as well, but I'd love to talk about that.
Not yet. We are really working on that. I think that is, Johns Hopkins and some people in New York City and some people on the West Coast and in Colorado have done some tremendous work with psychedelic psychotherapy. There's a lot of data about the ability of psychedelic psychotherapy to help people get to a new place wherever they are. And scientifically, sometimes people dismiss that data just because of the 60s and all of the propaganda around it. But the fact is that even the early data on psychedelics was very positive. And now psychedelic psychotherapy for substance use disorders, whether it's alcohol or other substances, for post-traumatic stress disorder, for depression and anxiety, for illness-related anxiety, for social anxiety among people with autistic spectrum disorders, it all looks very positive. And by positive, I don't mean that it looks like it works. I mean that it looks like it works in a way that is more potent than anything that's being used in pharmacology or psychotherapy. So I am sort of reorienting my career toward that, because it looks like the most important work that can be done in psychiatry and psychology, and I want to try to be part of that. But there are already people doing really strong clinical trials of psychedelics. The evidence is great.
Yeah, I've seen, I believe it was Johns Hopkins, they were doing something with psilocybin mushrooms, but then I also saw MDMA for PTSD.
Yeah, the FDA has gotten on board with that. They are fast-tracking MDMA. They're fast-tracking ketamine.
Really?
Yeah, and I have concerns about some of the ways that this is being implemented. For instance, ketamine, I mean, they've made a nasal spray out of it, and they're treating depression with it, and that's fine. But I think that psychedelic psychotherapy is better. Higher doses, fewer doses, and using a lot of support around the use of psychedelics is important. But I'm happy to see that it's moving ahead, and that these compounds, after so many years of demonization, are being studied, and I hope to be part of it.
That'd be great. I have heard in the past of, I think it was cancer patients that are actually getting ready to die using psilocybin mushrooms, and makes them a lot less afraid of death. But there's also like ibogaine and ayahuasca, and from everything I read out, it like can completely rewire your brain to before the person was addicted to substances. It's super profound.
Oh, it is. I mean, that's the really exciting stuff. So DMT and ayahuasca and all the drugs of that class that include psilocybin and LSD, I mean, all of those have helped people through the years to get off of substances that they don't want to be using. So while I am excited to do research on kratom, and I think it's important to do it, I think that these psychedelics have even a more profound effect and help people. I actually know somebody who went through the Hopkins study, and sometimes people suggest that maybe the efficacy of these drugs is being overstated. It is not. They change people's lives. They reset people's minds, and the interesting thing is that for all of the dosing that they've done at Hopkins with psilocybin and in other places with MDMA, there have been almost no significant adverse events. There was somebody who had some heart problems following a dosing of MDMA. That person was okay. From a psychological, psychiatric standpoint, psychedelics can be used in the right setting, with the right mindset and preparation, very safely.
Yeah, it goes back. Yeah, it's that whole harm reduction thing, and when people aren't forced into a underground and actually know what they're getting, it's a lot safer. And I'm really hoping all that work keeps progressing like the way it is. Now,
I agree.
You said you had a friend that was involved in the Hopkins. Was that for MDMA or psilocybin or?
I know somebody who was involved in the Hopkins psilocybin study of illness-related anxiety. Yeah, and she did very well. It's just consistent with all these other reports of people doing well with addiction and depression, anxiety. I mean, these psychedelic compounds really do reset people's minds, and it's probably more potent than anything in psychology or psychiatry at this point.
Now, I know you have some history. I don't know if it's just studying or actually being involved in interventions. Do you want to talk about anything you've done, like towards drug addiction and harm reduction?
We've done some work in criminal justice systems to try to help people reduce their substance use if they want to, and we use motivational interviewing to do that. It's a psychosocial intervention. Yeah, it has helped people, but we take a very harm reduction consistent approach. We're not trying to force anything on them. If they want help, we help them where they are. And, whether that means helping them be abstinent, as a lot of people want to do, probably most of the people I've worked with, we work on that. If it means, smoking crack and not getting arrested for it, we help them with that, because I think that incarceration is a problematic thing, and that most of these people are not doing violence, and basically if we can keep them out of jail or prison, it's good for everybody.
Yeah, I think it's great. I'm always trying to find out more about harm reduction and people that are actually involved in it, because I think when we're looking at that versus a abstinence, it seems like it's always harm reduction is going to be the better way.
It seems that way to you. It seems that way to me. But a lot of people feel differently, and we kind of have to win them over. I mean, basically, it's treating people like you would want to be treated. And if they don't want to be abstinent, let's not make a moral judgment about them and then make that law and incarcerate them. Let's help them get where they want to go if it benefits them and everybody else. So that's why I like harm reduction approaches. But that doesn't mean that I don't think that some people, like, the best way to go is to be abstinent from certain substances, because some people can't reduce their substance use without being off of it altogether. So it's both, and we can do both of them, and it's really up to the people we're working with to make the decision, and then we can try to help them get where they want to go.
Yeah, I think the biggest part is that if they just have to be ready. Once someone's like ready, have their mindset on, it usually goes a lot better. But I know I know you got to get going. I do want to ask you now, if you were to have somebody from the FDA in front of you and you could actually let them know anything, what would you tell them?
Well, I'd show them the science on kratom and say, hey, we have a lot of evidence that this is doing some good, and that if you take it away, it'll do a lot of harm. And I would also sort of make the annoying argument that the FDA is a really important institution, and that by not following the science, they are degrading it.
I'd agree that I'm not really I'm much more for a free market, but the logical, common sense regulation when needed. But in this case, we just need the FDA to do their job. If they were to just regulate it, people would guarantee that when they buy kratom, it's actually kratom. It's not adulterated. It's not an extract. It doesn't have some other drug in it. That would be a great start.
Isn't that the irony? It's a great irony. I mean, it's personally satisfying, but otherwise pretty bad. that the FDA is in charge of regulating products, and instead of regulating kratom, they are trying to ban it and do the most insane thing you could do.
Probably the most harm. Yeah, if they would just do their job, everyone would be a lot safer.
Yep.
Dr. Swogger, I could talk to you for probably hours about kratom and harm reduction and everything, but is there anything else you wanted to say or plug before we go?
I'm on Twitter at Marc Swogger, but otherwise, no. If you contact me through my university email, which is readily available online, I'm happy to send papers, science on kratom, to anybody who needs it, and sometimes people need it given these sort of rolling bans that are happening across the country. Other than that, just be safe, and thanks so much, Mike. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks a lot. I will talk to you soon.
Take care.
All right, thanks. So that about does it for this week's show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you got something out of the show, if you enjoy it and you got something out of it, please like, share, subscribe, tell a friend. Big thanks to Candid Orange Flavor Kratom. If you want to try Candid, make sure you tell your favorite vendor that you want Candid Kratom at their retail shop, especially if they're already selling Kratom. Ask them about that, and then we'll get Candid in there. Don't forget about the contest, or the giveaway rather, not a contest, for Candid. Definitely go check out massherbalmarket.com. That is massherbalmarket.com. Pick up some awesome kratom. We got excellent kratom. Comes from one farm in Indonesia. Absolutely excellent. Money back guaranteed. If you don't like it or have any issues at all, we're so happy to swap it out or give you a refund. But luckily we haven't had anybody take us up on that. You can also pick up a t-shirt. Get yourself a kratom t-shirt. These t-shirts are awesome. Kratom saves lives. Keep kratom legal. Great way to help support the show. My wife and I, a local business. Go check us out on Twitter at Kratom Guy Show and just give us a follow and we'll pick from one of the followers. And big thanks to you, the listener. Really can't do this without you guys. So love you guys. Thank you so much for your continued support. And like I mentioned, I love getting your messages. And the text list has become a lot harder to do. I've basically been kicked off a couple of platforms for daring to text about kratom. And it was a lot easier from my previous phone. I could do batches of like 10. So please hit me up. Tell me where you guys are hanging out. Where's the best place to reach people? Because I'm getting throttled on all the social media. We are going to have a kratomguyshow.com coming up. But give me a call. Give me a text. 617-917-5242. 617-917-5242. I love to hear from you guys about your kratom stories. If you're new or you're a seasoned kratom consumer, give me a call. I love hearing from you guys. I love hearing the success stories. So give me a call, give me a text. That phone number goes right to me. And check us out on YouTube. We got a bunch of videos up there. Of course, the Twitter is at Kratom Guy Show. We are going to be starting a new Instagram. Soon, so be on the lookout for that. Or you can always find me as Really Mike O, either on Twitter or Instagram, Facebook, and our Patreon. Please, if you like more in-depth reporting, more investigative journalism, once we sign up a couple more vendors and I'm not packing orders anymore, we're going to really concentrate on the show to keep getting the truth out. Until next time, folks, together we can keep kratom legal, safe, and available for all. Peace.